got some fun stuff planned for the day. But first and foremost, dear Jonhson here, Rattletrap 1776. Make sure you're following the correct pages. There are a ton of fake pages out there, a ton of people harassing people, frauds, scams, etc. It's not me. The best thing you can do is go to my link tree, linktr.ee/1776nation, and then find one of my blue check pages, which would be Facebook, Dear Jonhson Country, Instagram, Dear Jonhson Country, X, old school Twitter, which is Rattletrap 1776, or True Social, which has a red check, not a blue, at Derek Jonhson. Either one of those pages that have a blue or red check, I will confirm and validate my link tree on there. So make sure you're following the correct pages. If it's not on that link tree, then it's probably not my page, obviously. I do have some backup pages just in case there was ever another shenanigan roll like Facebook got on there for a while. But until I need those backup pages, they're not in use. So my official and only pages will be on that link tree. All right, so I still see a lot of confusion out there, and I think it's just because so many people are, you just so innocently, you're caught in a web, right? You want to believe in good, you want to believe in wholesome, you want to believe in there's something happening, you want to believe, you want to, but you're just still stuck in the past. All right, the whole purpose of 45-47, the whole purpose in that was to get rid of the drama, to get rid of the propaganda, to get rid of the moving mouths that don't have a clue what's going on both sides of the aisle. Now, I'm going to tell you what, Republicans out there, Republicans are making more of a case that they don't know what's going on like the liberals are. You know, there's only one good thing about a liberal. The one good thing about a liberal is that they're all cohesive with what they hate. They dumb as bricks, all right? The day a liberal becomes smart, you'll see a penguin take flight, all right? But other than that, they at least stick together and hate everything equally. Republicans, dear God, have mercy. Y'all are arguing about everything and anything. I mean, you just want to argue. I don't get it. I mean, I guess you just love fighting or arguing. I don't know what it is. It blows my mind that so many Republicans, you just want to fight, pick a fight. You just want drama, propaganda. You want hysteria. You want chaos. You want that. It just seems like. Because you don't have to have it. You can escape it real quick. So you could put a little faith in the man you claim that you support. All right. Now, I got a saying and a quote is this. All right. A lot of you are putting faith. You're putting faith in the image of a man. All right. Instead, you should put your faith in God's plan, and then you will be able to trust the man with the plan on earth that was called by God. See, hear what I'm saying now. A lot of you put your faith in the imagery. You're not putting your faith in God and a plan. All right, because God's plan, he commands people. And he uses the least likely person that you thought would ever be used. But see, so many people have been trapped by the little black box. And if it don't come off Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, CNN, and all the others, if it don't come from there and or the ones that have these massive platforms with the blue check and all they do, I mean, you talking about algorithm whores? They spit out post, 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 post. You can't even, a cat can't lick its rear end that fast. And cats love to lick their butts, in case you ain't noticed. But all these platforms out there, post, 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 post. No wonder you people are confused. No wonder, because you sit on Facebook all day or you sit on the internet all day. You ain't putting this, and this where it matters. This man right here is the face and the image of this operation. Now, he's smart and he's brilliant. He's witty and he's the real deal. However, the man you're seeing on TV, it's not real President Trump. All right? I don't know how many times we got to go over this. You're watching an operation. The whole thing is an operation. That is an image of the whole operation. It's that simple. Then you got to know our foundation. You got to know our origin. You have to know a little bit of our history. Liberals, they love the word Constitution. They love the image of the word. They have no idea what any of the Constitution says. Much less do they know how to make it applicable to everything else. The Constitution, the supreme law of the land, there are laws under that. See, the Constitution is a framework, and it's a broad framework, and it should be broad. Religion, relationships, even sexual preferences, all that stuff should have never entered government. That's what you call politics. It's not government. And now, I'm not a supporter of big government especially, but we should have a tiny, tiny government, and even then, you shouldn't rely on the government. We have representatives who represent us. It's so hard to comprehend in another way. It's not, but that's a kind of a oxymoron on purpose. But our founders, they started the Revolutionary War for a slogan and a motto called taxation without representation. Taxation without representation. Now we have representatives, and people don't even know what they're supposed to do. The whole root word of representative is to represent. Well, who are they representing? We the people. But when we the people can't even name the three branches of government, that is why the libtards think they have a king. All right? And military personnel, we're okay with that because we know what's going on back here, most of us. And it's for the greater good of everybody. It's a way to separate politics, religion, preferences, and all those things. Set that aside for a moment. Let's go, okay, now how did we get to this level? How do we have infrastructure like we have? How do we have a monetary system like we have? How do we have everything that we have? How do we pay for the highways, the bridges, the city streets, the town halls, the lights, the city lights? We all benefit from that. And too many Christians, oh, you holier than thous, you definitely don't know what's going on. And you're too focused on things that don't matter. All right, how you believe in God or a supreme being or a spiritual being or whatever you believe in, that's on you. You can't prove what you believe no more than the next person. Therefore, that's an internal right here. It's an internal thing. But a lot of you don't even act like it. If you're negative, if you're upset, if you're bitter, if you're mad, if you're frustrated, if you're any of those things, you're not acting like a Christian. So, so I'm not going to preach today. I'm not Billy Graham. Thank goodness. All right. But too many people are still replicating that. And I know it's confusing in another manner. That's why I always show grace, because I've always sit here and think, now what if my grandmother was sitting here watching? I still have that conscience going, okay, what if my grandma was sitting here watching? But we have reached a place where social media has dominated people's lives. And you sit with your phone in your hand 24/7. And a lot of people, you're looking for answers and new answers. The answer's already there. Everything you need to know is already there. It's already there. It's already there. And you don't need anything else. all you need is faith, spiritual being, whatever you want to call it. Faith here. And once you understand God, all right, and the universe, then you will understand that some people know how to fight for other people. Liberals, Democrats, they only fight for themselves. They don't fight for you. And the attitude of anybody, but especially a Christian, but the attitude is to be a Christian right here, right, and walk around and you judge yourself. Don't worry about other people. If they ain't hurting or harming you, you don't worry about them. You walk around and you do what you're supposed to be doing. You do what you are called to do. All right? That ain't to put down anybody, to preach to anybody, to any of that. You walk around right here. When people see what you have, they'll want to know. They'll want to know, why are you so calm in the midst of a storm? Why are you so positive in the midst of chaos? Why are you so They'll want to know. Now, there's a time to kick a little, ain't no doubt. There's a time to put them up. There is a time for everything. But right now, we're not even in that. This whole thing is so easy to see once you eliminate all these moving mouths out there who do nothing but post. And it's a bunch of hot air. Then people will say, well, how do you know so much? Well, how did Moses know what he was doing? How did Noah know what he was doing? How did Paul know what he was doing? I mean, we can sit here and name all day long. Somebody has to know. Somebody has to be the one. But when you're focusing on plurality too much, plurality is what gets your emotions all out of whack. Hear that? Hear that, plural? Your emotions, plural. Your feelings, plural. That's what gets those all out of whack. And you're going over, and maybe it's because someone's sitting there and they're all muscled up and they look better, and oh, well, they're a lot more of this and that. That's part of people's problems, is you're going by this right here. All right, truth ain't got a thing to do with how you look, how you talk, anything like that. Facts. But you even have Johnny Cash, who came out with a song, I think, in 1970 or 71 called What is Truth? That was way back then. A lot of you were living back then, and a lot of you say the 70s were way better than now, and I would agree. But how is Johnny Cash singing a song way back then called What is Truth? Go listen to the lyrics. Boy, you could apply that song today. Better today than then. You are the truth. You are. All right? And too many Christians have put your faith in a building and called it a church. The church is right here. That's your church. That's your temple right here. And if you would put your faith into God and your temple, and you would feed your temple the manna that the Bible tells you, you wouldn't look atrocious right now. You wouldn't look like you're all in your feelings, in your emotions. Put the phone down, all right? Yes, a page like mine is here for you, to teach you, right, to feed you that. But then you got to put it down and go make it applicable. You need to go read these things. Now, I'm going to go ahead and announce this now because I was going to wait, but it's a perfect time to announce that I've written another book. I'm on book number 5 now, but I just wrote a book, and someone in my team said, you ought to write a book for dummies. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't believe you're a dummy. I don't think you're a dummy. I have faith in every one of you. All right, but for whatever reason, no one's ever done this before, so I did it. It's 560-something pages. Freak out. No pictures. All words. 560-something pages. But it's every single founding document, etc., 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 condensed down, layman's terms, all right, in the best chronological order possible up to a point, all right. No American after this book should have any excuses why they don't have a solid foundation. No American whatsoever. American. The word American don't say anything about your ethnicity. It don't say anything about your nationality. It don't say anything about your religion. It don't say anything about your marriage status and or your preferences. It has nothing to do with that. At the end of the day, an American should know the solid foundation, the origin and history of that foundation, and make it applicable. Now, the Constitution was written again to be broad for a reason, and then the laws and orders under it were supposed to follow we the people, the representatives, the legislative branch writing what we the people wanted. But what did we the people do all these years? We the people got into materialism. We the people got into lust, the lust of money. The Bible says it's a lust of money. It ain't money that's the root of all evil. It's the lust of it. Right? So look at what Americans have put their faith as. People, you always want a bigger house. Always want a better car. Always want a bigger truck. Want. It's not a need. So many Americans focus on their wants, not their needs. They focus on happiness, not contentment. There's a huge difference. Happiness, emotions, feelings, they fluctuate. You can be happy one day, you can be mad the next. Contentment. So many Americans do not focus on being content. That can bring you joy. It can bring you happiness when you focus on contentment. So somebody has to be called by God. And it's not just one, it's multiple. But when you look at who President Trump is nominating and putting in positions, they're all businessmen and women and or veterans. And if you go back and look at Eisenhower and the continuity government, if you go back and look at the origin of the continuity government, if you look at the origin of the military occupation, military operations, if you go back and look at those origins, that's exactly what they did. Businessmen, businesswomen. But then look what happens shortly after it. Greed, money, lust of money, greed, Lyndon Johnson. And Americans just kept right on, then got hooked to the tube. Boom. They got everybody. The moon. Imaginations. They wrap those imaginations in stuff that are just so far-fetched and got everybody's mind. And you know why? Because Americans are what? You're good people. We're good people. We're trustworthy. We want to believe in the good. But that's where evil, the wolves in sheep's clothing. The Bible says that the devil is always out to seek to what? Steal, kill, destroy. So you always have to be on your P's and your Q's. Always. Daily. It's a spiritual battle daily. And like President Trump just said in his press conference, light over darkness. That's not a massive operation in the sense of, oh, we're going to do this massive operation, we're going to clean it all out, and it's all going to be good. No. We do this massive operation, we clean it all out. You the people, we the people, have to stay on top of this daily. Daily. You have to fight daily. You won't have to fight as much, though, when we eradicate as much as we can and get the evil back down to this lower level where we can put it in a compartment, and then we can keep an eye on that. So, that's not even my spiel today, so let's get rolling. All right, so 2017 to 2021. See, so many Americans are treating President Trump's first term as a separate term. It's not the case whatsoever. It's continuous. All right, not only does the dash show you that, not only does that show you that, but Laws and order show you this. And then key things that I talk about all the time, which is why I'm repetitive, because every now and then people say, oh my gosh, it clicked. And I'm like, well, I have said it 500 trillion times, but that's okay. Everybody thinks different. Everybody studies different. Everybody hears different. And that's what it's for, repetitive. Repetitive. And once you learn it, you got it. I mean, it is truly like riding a bike. Once you learn the terminology, the verbiage, all right, then you'll make it applicable. And once you make it applicable, I mean, that's why I hold that ball cap up so much, 45-47. Once you learn that and don't try to look anywhere else, you're going to get it. All right? So, 2017 to 2021, those were very key because that was the resetting of the legislative branch. All right? 2021 to 2025 was a resetting of the executive branch. Right now, 2025 to 2029 is the resetting of the judicial branch. All right? And it's very simple. 2017 to 2021, President Trump invoked all these unique laws and orders. One national emergency unlocks 120 statutory powers. All right, 120. All right. Now, each national emergency still has the same 120, but if you have 12 national emergencies open, then you have the same 120. But if you terminate one or you resolve one, joint resolution, let's say you had 12 and now you have 11, well then you have 11, 120. You solve that one, you're down to 10, you still have 120. So those powers are still there until those are solved. All right. So President Trump has been talking about quick trials a lot. He started talking about the quick trials way back 2022 at what people thought were rallies. He'd have speeches at Mar-a-Lago, he'd have speeches everywhere, and then he'd have rallies. There's no such thing as a midterm rally, first off, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so you got to think about all these rallies you saw in 2022, 2023. The election year was when? 2024. All right, so no such thing as midterm rallies. Those were all proclamations. All right, so he was telling you all along the way what was coming now. So that's why I was covering everything back then too, because I knew what they were and knew what was coming. All right, so the quick trials. He talked about the quick trials. He said, I asked President Xi what he did for drug trafficking. He said, what drugs? We have quick trials. Trial in the morning, execution by end day. All right. Well, when you have an operation that's launched, first off, by our military, but then two, when it's a live operation, all right, and you have bad guys, cartel, operating live as well, you don't have to wait for a trial. They shouldn't be doing what they're doing. All right? They're in a vessel. They're moving drugs around. Boom! There's your trial right there. We don't even have to waste taxpayer dollar, which taxpayer dollars is not going for that anymore. But for the target audience who thinks that, right, that's what they need to hear, right? So the target audience thinks that. So you don't waste that. They shouldn't have been doing what they're doing. Funny how that all of us law-abiding citizens made it all our lives without being arrested. Nothing on my record. Funny how that operates. Funny when I listen to my dad say, hey, how about you do what's right from the start and then you won't ever have to worry about anything else. So see, if these people were doing what they were supposed to be doing, they wouldn't be doing anything unlawful, illegal, that kills people. But first and foremost, if you know any liberal, or if you know any Democrat, or if you know an atrocious Republican, remember they were all, they were rhinos, boy. They were Republican, but they didn't want no President Trump. Remember the Never Trumpers? Remember those people? But they claim to be Republicans? Yeah, those people? Yeah. All those entities, if you know anybody who says anything about the military being in operations on drug trafficking, you remind them, if you take up for anyone who's trafficking drugs, guess what? Drug trafficking is one of the key components of funding child trafficking. So you let them know that they support child trafficking. If they want trial and due process for anything of that nature, they shouldn't have been doing what they were doing. Anyone who supports or takes up or defends any form of drug trafficking, you're supporting child trafficking. And you probably should be tried for sedition yourself, if not deported. I hate to keep picking on Tasmania, but I'm telling you, it'd be a great place to send liberals. Ship them out of here. They're nothing but the enemies of the Republic. And a lot of Republicans, if you don't want to be perceived as that, you probably want to listen, study, and know what the man's working with that you claim to support. Again, over and over. So President Trump was in a press conference just a couple of days ago, and one of the reporters said, "Why don't you just ask for a declaration of war?" And President Trump says, "Well, we don't need a declaration of war. We're just going to kill them dead." Well, that's a wartime president. All right. The reason why I grin and laugh is because, again, how did I reach 42 years old, never been arrested, never done drugs, never even smoked? All right. How did I get to this point? How did I get here? How did I know to listen to my dad and my mother and my grandparents? How did I know to listen to my elders? How did I know that? Just simply listening to your family members and your formative years, that don't mean you're going to grow up and be a law-abiding citizen. So how is it that all of us law-abiding citizens made it to this point? And why do we have people who claim that they're law-abiding citizens taken up for such garbage? They're not. Anyone taken up for it, sedition, treason, and should be deported. If not, tried and also sent to prison. You don't like the harshness? You probably shouldn't act like it. You probably shouldn't act and replicate an enemy of the Republic. So, we don't need a declaration, but just for the sake of, like a broken record, hit the drumsticks. What am I about to say, people? Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. Uh-oh, I think we already have a declaration. See, if people knew what they were supposed to know, now I know the reporters are all part of the operation. I know this is all an operation. All this is pre-planned. All of the press conferences are pre-recorded. Everything you're watching is all an operation. That's why President Trump is seen on the golf course a lot. That's why the liberals lose their mind and say he's played more golf than any. That's right, because he's a wartime president. This is a special operation. He's allowed to do that because this is a special operation. The real President Trump. Not the one you see on TV. All right. Yeah. Well, if people knew what they were supposed to know, Merle Haggard had a song way back in the 70s. If people start doing what they ought to be doing, then they won't be booing no more. When the president goes through the White House door and does what he says he'll do. Same verse. If people start doing what they ought to be doing, then they won't be booing no more. When the president goes through the White House door and does what he says he'll do, we'll all be drinking that free bubble up and eating that rainbow stew. I don't know what rainbow stew tastes like, but, I mean, I don't know who can make rainbow stew, but I know where we can find some bubble up. So I think we should all be drinking free bubble up and eating rainbow stew after Merle Haggard's song has come true after all these years. Except for the people booing out there who have no clue about our foundation, no clue about our origin, no clue about our history, no clue about the Constitution, no clue about the Declaration of Independence, no clue about the Federalist Papers, no clue how you fight, maintain, and sustain our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. See, it says pursuit of happiness. You know why it's the pursuit of it? Because a lot of people are never happy. And happiness is not a solid foundation. It's always a pursuit of it. And if you're always pursuing happiness, that means you're always what? Making sure you're fighting evil and enemies of the Republic. That's what that's all about. It had nothing to do with you buying a brand new GMC 2500 HD 4x4. Had nothing to do with that. Also in the Bible, where it says you fought the good fight, you finished the race, that ain't the Facebook comment boxes. That's not social media comment boxes whatsoever. So, like a broken record, let's look at Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 again. All right, straight out the gate, let's just go ahead and tell who it was and what it was. So if you go back to December 2019, there was a House of Representatives Democrat-controlled. Democrat-controlled House of Representatives? Senate was controlled by the Republicans? And they actually put a bipartisan plan together? Wow, funny how that works. Reports and briefings on use of military force and support of partner forces. Not later than 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, which happens to be the day that the Space Force was established. And every 180 days thereafter, the President shall submit to the Congressional Defense Committees, the Committee on Foreign Relations of the Senate, and the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the House of Representatives, a report on actions taken pursuant to the authorization for use of military force against those countries or organizations, cartels, Antifa, Tren de Aragua, described in such law, as well as any actions taken to command, coordinate, participate in the movement of, or accompany the regular or irregular military forces, special operations, covert, clandestine operations, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, of any foreign country or government when such forces are engaged in hostilities or in situations where imminent involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated by the circumstances during the preceding 180-day period. So see, there's no loopholes. It says not later than 180 days after December the 20th. So there's 180 days. That would be business days, so it's August 28, 2020 will be the first 180 days. All right, so we're about to show what happened in that first 180 days, but there's 180 days, and it says every 180 days thereafter. Well, when it's a temporary order, which we're going to talk about, when it's temporary, that means it has to have a resolution. Because it tells you in here in codification that this is temporary. Therefore, it's going to have a resolution. And until it's not registered here anymore or it's terminated and it tells you in Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, then it is still ongoing. And you can't be sitting there, oh, Trump was right about everything, if you don't believe the man. You cannot be President Trump and then turn around and doubt anything that's in laws and orders. Because there's visuals daily of Southern Command taking out vessels. This is the prescription. I'm not yelling. I'm passionate because I'm trying to show people this is it right here. It's all right here. Codification. Section was enacted as a part of the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year of 2020 and not as a part of the War Powers Resolution, which comprises this chapter. Comprises. So it's telling you right there that this is part of the NDAA 2020, which the NDAA is your defense budget. All right, but defense budgets can be continuous. It don't just have to be, oh, that was just for 2020, and now it's over. No, not when you have visual strikes that also tie into the launching of the operation. So now, we're going to skip over really quick. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to read this really quick. Executive Order 13912. All right, this was in the first 180 days. After bipartisan Congress put that temporary NDAA as a section in the War Powers Act of 1973 in Title 50. Title 50, keep in mind, is War and National Defense. This is President Trump's executive order. Now, what confused everybody, and you'll still have some Republicans who need to be virtually, graciously, godfully slapped upside the head, all right? They think this is, oh, that was 2020 and that was COVID. If I hear the word COVID again, I just, woo! That gets me fired up, son. And people back then wouldn't listen, and it was all part, it's all in the documents. Executive Order 13912, March 27, 2020. Now listen to what it says. National Emergency Authority to order the selected reserve and certain members of the individual ready reserve of the armed forces to active duty. All right, now, four sections of Title 14 were invoked in this executive order. You know what Title 14 is, ladies and gentlemen? That'd be the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is the Department of Homeland Security during peacetime. They transfer over to the Department of Defense during a wartime, in which they're under the Department of the Navy during that wartime. Now, Executive Order 13919, April the 30th. So that was March 27, 2020. This is April the 30th. I'm going to skip a date on purpose. April the 30th, Executive Order 13919, ordering the selected reserve of the armed forces to active duty. Now listen how this is worded. This is the key one to listen how it's worded. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including Section 12304 of Title 10, United States Code, and having determined that it is necessary to augment the regular armed forces of the United States for a named operational mission, specifically the, quote, enhanced Department of Defense counter-narcotic operation in the Western Hemisphere, end quote. I hereby order as follows. Section 1, Activation Authority. The Secretary of Defense is directed, key, listen, the Secretary of Defense is directed to order to active duty. That is a direct order from the Commander-in-Chief, ladies and gentlemen. The Secretary of Defense is already under the Commander-in-Chief. That is a direct order from the Commander-in-Chief to the Secretary of Defense, now called Secretary of War. Very specific. Two things off of this. The Enhanced Department of Defense counter-narcotic operation. That was an operation that was launched April the 1st. See, this is April the 30th, the order. Back here, April the 1st, no fooling around, operation was launched with Southern Command. When you read the newspaper articles right now, all these vessels being hit by Venezuela, guess who it is? Southern Command, Southern Command, Southern Command. Guess what it says? It says in the Western Hemisphere. Huh. That's funny, because President Trump has Truth on Truth Social pictures in a unique kind of way the Monroe Doctrine from 1823. You know what the Monroe Doctrine reads? Let's just see what it reads. President James Monroe's 1823 annual message to Congress contained the Monroe Doctrine, which warned European powers not to interfere in the affairs of the Western Hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine was articulated in President James Monroe's 7th annual message to Congress on December the 2nd, 1823. The European powers, according to Monroe, were obligated to respect the Western Hemisphere as the United States' sphere of interest. And President Trump has made truth after truth, post after post, at different times, after these orders were put into place about the Western Hemisphere. People don't even listen to the man they claim to support. You're all, the people who are that, whoever you are, you're all image, you're no faith whatsoever. April the 1st, I'm going to read this off. Southcom enhanced counter-narcotics operations. Boy, that sounds a lot like that executive order from April the 30th, 2020. What's it say again? Enhanced counter-narcotics operations. Wow. Whoa, what a coincidence that is. U.S. Southern Command's enhanced presence will support ongoing whole-of-government and internationally supported operations to reduce the availability of illicit drugs and save lives in the United States and throughout the region. The intent is to reduce the flow of illicit drugs, degrade transnational criminal organizations, and increase interoperability with our partner nations and interagency partners. The operation supports our objectives to degrade the capabilities of drug trafficking operations, save lives, and directly support the National Drug Control Strategy. Now, again, what's key about this is Southcom, United States Southern Command, on April the 1st, 2020, putting out their publication of what was coming. Very key. President Trump's first executive order invoked Title 10, Section 12302. Title 10 is the funding of the troops. The NDAA, and then also your Title 50, that's not the funding of it. That's the policies and telling you, here's what's about to happen. Title 10 is President Trump saying, all right, we're about to put this bad boy to work. All right. Title 10, Section 12302, March 27, 2020, Executive Order 13912. In the Executive Order 13919 on April the 30th, the direct order to the Secretary of Defense, now the Secretary of War, all right, that invoked Title 10, Section 12304. Two different Title 10s, but two different fundings. This operation was launched in the middle of those, but obviously closer to March 27th than the April 30th. April the 1st, 2020. The other thing that's key about this, if you'll go back and listen to some of President Trump's press conferences, matter of fact, one of them just said it again in the last week. They thanked President Trump for having the whole of government. The whole of government. All right, so WHOLE dash of dash government. The dashes matter. All right, whole of government approach. If you go back and listen to your puppet president, who was not a real president, all right, it was a puppet government, a puppet state, all right, it was a puppet strategy, it was a strategic operation that took place in the 40s. It's only far-fetched because you've never heard of it, but the puppet government of quote-unquote Joe, if you'll go back and listen, all you heard during that time period was the words in the phrase whole of government. Very key. Now we're going to go down here and look at it. Mission. On April the 1st, 2020, United States Southern Command began enhanced counter-narcotics operations in the Western Hemisphere to disrupt the flow of drugs in support of presidential national security objectives. Funny. They do listen to the Commander-in-Chief. Location. What's it say again? The Caribbean Sea? And Eastern Pacific Ocean. What date was this again? April the 1st, 2020? I love this stuff so much. I just love being a smart ass sometimes. Resources. Additional U.S. capabilities include Navy destroyers and helicopters, Coast Guard cutters and helicopters, Navy littoral combat ships, Customs and Border Protection maritime patrol aircraft, Navy P-8 patrol aircraft, the Poseidon, Air Force E-3 AWACS aircraft, ISR, and E-8 Joint Stars aircraft. Oh, wow, that's funny because I just happen to have files and files of those operating all over the country and the world. Funny how that works. Security Forces Assistance Brigade Company to advise and assist. Ally and partner contributions. Let's see what we have here. 22 nations provide intelligence and operation support as a part of Joint Interagency Task Force. Oh, yeah, heard of them, sure. Key partners in this fight: Colombia, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Panama, as well as European partners. France, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom will provide capabilities. U.S. whole-of-government efforts continue with interagency assets from Customs and Border Patrol, the DEA, and others. These enhanced counter-narcotics operations constitute an increase in naval destroyers, combat ships, aircraft, and helicopters, and Coast Guard cutters. Let's see. So, Colombia. President Trump just talked about them. We have El Salvador. I'm pretty sure that's where we're sending back all these bad dudes, right? Panama. Executive Order 13936 from July the 4th, 2020, which is in that same 180 days. There's one of those executive orders with the national emergency that old Joe Biden just happened to continue and hand back to President Trump on January the 20th, 2025. Now, why would quote-unquote Joe do that? Didn't we just send 4,000 Marine Corps down to Panama a couple months ago? Now, why would quote-unquote Joe continue an executive order with a national emergency to hand back to President Trump just to call him a dictator and a fascist and a Nazi and all these other things? How does that not click with people? I mean, really. I mean, that's what makes me sit up in my chair and go, how does that not click? How does that not make any sense to people? How? How does it not make sense that quote-unquote Joe, Kamalama Ding Dong, all right, and all these others that people think were real, they're calling President Trump a dictator, a fascist, a Nazi, a threat to the Constitution, but they continued 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies that's taken back the Panama Canal that we just sent 4,000 Marine Corps to? That's in a operation right here, April the 1st, 2020. Did they not know that that was coming? If you think they're real, does that not make sense? How does that not make sense? They sent President Trump through these quote-unquote midterm rallies, which was no such thing. He sat and told exactly what he was going to do. How is it that we reached a place in society, in America, where a United States retired veteran has been scrutinized more than the president? Explain that. And it's all right here, and you have visuals daily, all the way up to October 26, 2025, as we speak today, of visuals of these operations launched way back here that made it all the way through Title 10, Title 32, made it all the way through 2021 and 2025. If Joe Biden was president, he'd have the same power and authority as every other president. And there'd been nothing that anybody could have done outside of an insurrection, outside of a civil war, outside of a revolutionary war. There's nothing no one could have done to stop the Democrats from abolishing every single thing that President Trump put into place. That's what you witnessed your whole life. You witnessed politics. You witnessed a president get in and then do these things. And then the next president come in and abolish. Every single thing that President Trump put into place from 2017 to 2021 made it through. Every single military order made it through. And I'm not supposed to be passionate. I'm not supposed to wake you up. I'm not supposed to rattle you a little bit and go, come on. You know, President Trump, even though he's the face, he's the image, he signed up for this, he put his name, brand, image, he's not the full brains behind it. It's the generals, the admirals, the whole military, the whole of government. All right, but again, President Trump is so rich, he didn't need any money. He didn't need the presidential stipend. He didn't need any of that. So you got to get in the mindset of going, when you have everything, when you have all the money in the world, and he's content. He's not happy, he's content. Big difference. When you have all the money in the world, and you're a good person, and you have a military backing you like he does, a world of military, why wouldn't you want to shit in the Wheaties? Of all the evil, all the corruption, all of it. Same thing with me. Every single one of these influencers out there, they can know, but they're keeping you from the truth. I can do this. How come I haven't been killed? How come no one's shot at me? How come no one's been at my door? How come the FBI, the CIA, Alex Jones? How come the CIA, FBI, how come they're after all these people? I mean, in reality, 1 million followers, 7 million, not much difference. All right? Because once you're out on social media, you're out. Once your face is out there, you're out there. Charlie Kirk got taken out, but I haven't been taken out. I've told more of the operation than anybody out there. And it's all public. It's all visual. It's all public knowledge. What's not public is your initiative. That's what's not public. Your initiative. Everything else is public. It's not secretive. If it was a clandestine operation, then once they make it visual, it's not clandestine anymore. But it could be identified by someone like me going, yeah, that would have been a clandestine operation, and now they're making it visual. That would have been a covert operation, but now they made it visual. Nothing I talk about is secretive. It's all public. But it requires military knowledge, and it requires military extensive strategies and also tactics, and someone who knows how to put all this together. But again, a lot of you are following the operation, and you don't realize it's an operation. You're still seeing it real time. It's not real time. All right, none of that. Now, some of us are not privy to everything. I'm not one of those. I'm not privy to everything. But that whole event on September the 10th was not real. Charlie Kirk, that was not real. That was not a real wound. None of that was real whatsoever. And to this day, and I didn't want to get on this topic, but I'm going to get on it while I'm here. But to this day, that video is not censored on Facebook or X. None of it. I saw just a meme that said something bad about President Trump that's flagged as censored content. It's just got the F word on it in President Trump's face. It's censored as graphic content. But not the original footage of September 10th. People, you're captured and you're controlled by syndicated TV, syndicated names. Just like Tucker Carlson has a lot of explaining to do why he's in the Biden laptop report. Now, I know it's all operational, so the explanations have already been explained, and this is all an operation. But for the target audience out there, y'all think he walks, you think he walks on water. Emails with Hunter Biden, Tucker Carlson. This has all been confirmed by the FBI, Rudy Giuliani, and the quote-unquote new interviews with fake Hunter, but for the target audience thinking it was real, July and August interviews with Hunter Biden. They confirmed this book. They confirmed the laptop. They confirmed the FBI. They confirmed Rudy Giuliani. 636 pages right here. Ties it everything. President Trump's already had multiple podcasts, but he's had multiple speeches on videos about this and the contents in here. You can already know. You captured and you control. So now, let's get back to the executive document at the bottom down here. Because if Joe Biden was president, he'd have had the same power, the same authority as every other president. Now again, things like a puppet government, which would be a puppet monarch, but a puppet government, puppet state, all right, those are the things that our founders even talked about. They warned about a puppet monarch. They even talked about this, all right, where you could be a puppet in a operation, or you could be a puppet in another manner, meaning that everybody behind you is puppeteering you, right? You're just a puppet to these voices, right? So there's two different, there's variables of puppet governments, but just because you've never heard of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's why there's always moving variables and there's always variations. That's why there's never like a specific answer sometimes with certain things until there's a visual operation, and then you go, okay, well, they're using it this way and they're using it this way and they're using it that way. Right? So, in the Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, if you scroll down to the bottom, under the codification where it says it's temporary, you scroll to the very bottom. It says executive documents, delegation of authority under Section 1285 of the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2020. All right, so that's tying in the action of December the 20th, 2019, right there with that title. Delegation of authority under the NDAA for fiscal year 2020. Quote unquote, Joe Biden wouldn't have been a visual president then for the target audience. So why does this executive document show Joe Biden's name? Well, I'm going to show you why. It says Memorandum of President, not of the President. It says Memorandum of President of the United States, July 19, 2021. All right. It says 86 FR 39939, which is a federal regulation provided. Memorandum for the Secretary of Defense. So it says Memorandum of President, but then it says Memorandum for the Secretary of Defense. By the authority vested in me as President, that's a clause that's used in every single entry just like this. That would not be Joe Biden as President. This whole line right here is in every single form of entry in the codification. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including Section 301 of Title III United States Code. That whole line right there is in every single entry. So when someone says, oh, that is Joe. No, that's what every entry looks like. This is why it's so hard to break this down in another manner, because people are not open to understanding operations, strategies, and tactics. And it's mainly older men because they're stubborn. And anyway, I won't say much anymore about that. But I hereby delegate to the Secretary of Defense the authority and functions vested in the President by Section 1285A through E of Public Law 116-92 on the use of military force and support of partner forces to the Congress. For the people who want to know and study and understand operations, tactics, and strategies of how this whole thing is in operation, that right there just told you that Joe Biden, for the people who are in the target audience who thought and think and just absolutely cannot wrap their minds around, for the target audience, not you patriots, but the target audience, that is Joe Biden relinquishing his authority as the Commander-in-Chief and President. That is a puppet government move right there. It says, I hereby delegate to the Secretary of Defense the authority and functions vested in the President of 1550. Who was the President December the 20th, 2019? That's when Section 1550 was put into the War Powers Act. That President is Donald John Trump. The Secretary of Defense is not in command of this nation and or the military without the Commander-in-Chief above him. You can't get any more clear and simpler than that. Second Philippine Republic. My grandfather served in the army during that time period. That's why I learned this and loved it, because he loved it. And I listened to him and his buddies talk all the time about these things. World War II. All right, my great uncles, every one of them served during World War II. All right, so the Second Philippine Republic. That's when Japan, so the president of the Philippines, Quezon, all right, he capitulated to Roosevelt, moved to D.C., all right. President Roosevelt had full control of the Filipino military. Japan installed a fake, phony, by image only, president, quote unquote, in the Philippines. Laurel. President Laurel. All right, so the people for a while thought it was President Quezon and President Laurel. Laurel only had control of civil affairs, not the military. That's it. So by operational standards, when you heard President Trump saying things like, all Joe had to do was keep that in place, he's talking about economics. He's talking about a tariff, or he's talking about, well, quote unquote, Joe never terminated tariffs. So that shows you he didn't even have control anyway. Because if he would have, he would have terminated the tariffs. All right, so all that is a different form of a puppet government. That was to enable, or whatever term you want to use, that was to get 12 years as an operation versus 8. So it's genius. You do 4 visual years, then you invoke a certain unique set of laws and orders right here that pulled President Trump back as a wartime president, all right, using tactics and strategies of days of old that have worked and did work and do work, all right, and let the military do what they were doing in every component, asset, etc., drug trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking, all the other things we were doing during that 4-year stretch. All right, and it also showed the people what you already had with President Trump. You already had a good economy. You already had low gas. You already had all these things. So it also simultaneously showed you, do you want to go back to high gas and manipulation, gaslighting, and conniving, and all these other terms, subversion language? Do you want to go back to that? You want that? Is that what you want? Because you can have it. You've always had it. Or you want a president who knows what the heck's going on. It's not pocketing anything. He don't need it. That's why there's so many variables to this. So many variables. The military got a man who was not in the military, but he wasn't in the government. Perfect. It's a resetting. Right? So they put him in 12. They get 12 visual years if you know operations, strategies, and tactics. You get 12, which would have taken 8. We can't lose our Constitution. We can't lose our Declaration. We can't lose our foundation. Therefore, everything had to be done lawfully. Well, there's a set of laws, unique, and strategies and tactics that allowed this to take place. And anybody who complains about it should probably be detained for sedition and treason and or deported, because you're not worthy of being in the republic. We're not a democracy. So when you hear President Trump say the words democracy, he's mocking what they established. They established a democracy. They established that. They, the deep state, they, the swamp. So when he says it, he's mocking them. Now, it's not real-time mockery. Everything that you're seeing, every single press conference, every single post, every single thing is choreographed. It's pre-planned. That is what that is a vision of. So when you get upset and you get frustrated, oh, President Trump should do this, or President Trump did that, blah, blah, blah. You're wasting your time and your energy. When you can flip your time and energy over and see it from the operational standpoint. Because if you believe President Trump is right about everything, which he is and was, but if you believe that, then you should believe it from the other standpoint of what's really going on. The only way he is and was right about everything is via the military. The way he was able to walk in all these nations and do what he's done, military. Because any of these nations who have their hands in the deep state pockets, which they have for years, many of them, the ones who capitulated, he was only able to walk in there and demand and command what he wanted and what's going to happen because of our military. We're the largest force. We're the greatest force. We have the greatest technology out of all the militaries. All right? That's why we don't need a lot of manpower. It don't matter when China says they got the largest manned military on the ground. When them B-1s and them B-2s and them B-52s fly over their heads, that right there ain't going to matter. This right here ain't going to matter. Now, we hope we don't ever come to that, but if we had to, that right there and the largest manpower don't mean jack doo-doo when it comes to technology. And even China, they focus on cheap shit, but they ain't got the military and the technology that we have. And B-1s and B-2s and B-52s, they speak, that's President Roosevelt saying it. Speak softly, carry a big stick. They're the big sticks. So naturally, for the target audience, they see things that look like retaliations. Well, there should be. That's what you want to see. If you understand operations, tactics, and strategies, you should want to see retaliations because why? Their Wheaties have been crapped in. Their quote-unquote democracy, their web of lies, their web of manipulation, their web of gaslighting, their web of subversion has been busted. But all that was their money. See, they got Americans fighting over religion, politics, patriotism, faith, ethnicities, nationalities, races, etc. Those are all our core competencies. Why are we fighting over our core competencies? Why are we fighting over our core values? See, and that's what they wanted. That's their tactic. And they got people supporting them thinking that there's going to be some kind of pot at the end of their rainbow, and there's not. It is for them up here. Civil Rights Act did that. They used black people as guinea pigs. They made all these black people think for years there's going to be some big, giveaway or we're going to give it. They've been lying to them ever since. Do you know what Lyndon Johnson called the Civil Rights Act? He called it the N-word, the N bill. The N-word bill. Boy. Do as I say, not as I do. So civil affairs, puppet government, puppet state. There were three things that were consistent around quote-unquote Joe. Only three. From 2021 to 2025, there was only three things that were consistent around quote-unquote Joe. It was insignia on military. Two of those were what you saw behind President Trump January the 20th, 2017 when he took us over. When we're taking the power out of D.C. and giving it back to you, the people, the military walked down, military intelligence, Judge Advocate General. There was one more added. It sounds like two, but there was one more added. These two words are one. That insignia that you saw around quote-unquote Joe was either military intelligence, Judge Advocate General, or Civil affairs and psychological operations. Civil affairs and psychological operations. That right there alone should tell you every single thing you're watching. Pre-planned, strategic, tactics, pre-recorded operation. You get 12 years, what would have taken 8? And it's all been done lawfully. Now, let's get into this. You have the liberals out there. This is how you combat a liberal. I actually have some people who message me all the time that they, know liberals or friends with them. I don't know how you do it, but kudos to you. I couldn't be a friend with a liberal. I want to slap the ever-living, I won't say the words, but I'm going to try to stop using some 4-letter words. But anyways, so President Trump, all this no king, no king, no king. Liberals have got to be literal. I think they're the dumbest people on the planet. I really do. I know we're supposed to be nice, and I do pray for them. I pray for a virtual big, giant rubber hand to just, but that's just me, And I mean that in a holy way, here's you some sense. But I think that a liberal will be smart the day penguins are flying. But we'll see. We'll see. The verdict is still out. The jury's still out. We'll see, But if children can't unify them, then they need to be deported. Just straight up. Because, again, they're an enemy to the republic. They yell the word Constitution, Constitution, Constitution. But they turn around and if they put the word Constitution and democracy in the same sentence, they're an enemy of the republic. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution that they so yell about and say that President Trump is a threat to, says we're a Republican form of government. Nowhere in our founding documents, nowhere. The Federalist Papers talk about, in Federalist Paper 10 and 14, James Madison, the father of the Constitution. Now this is what, I feel like my IQ just slides out my ears somehow. Our founding father that drafted the Constitution, wrote the Constitution, and drafted and wrote the Bill of Rights, where they get their First Amendment. The same person with the mind, the brain, the IQ to type these words, to write it the way he wrote it, the prescription of the way he wrote it, in the order in which he wrote it, in the manner in which he wrote it, in the mindset in which he wrote it. However you got to say it. The same man who wrote those, in Federalist Paper 10 and 14, same guy, how democracies are dangerous. So to me, if there is a liberal, whoever finds this video and you're listening, if you're going to believe in something, believe in it. Right? Integrity is to believe, even if you sound crazy and look stupid, believe in something. But the liberals out there, that 1 minute they're talking about, women can be men and men can be women and da-da-da-da-da. The next moment, in the same conversation, they can't even define a woman. That is not integrity, liberals. You want integrity? You want to believe in something? Believe in it. Even if you're believing in something so far-fetched, but as long as it's consistent, I'll hear you out. I may think you're crazy and dumb and an idiot, but at least be consistent. It can't be an oxymoron. It can't be a double standard. It can't be wishy-washy. So when you're yelling the word Constitution, then you put democracy in the same sentence, not even a paragraph, the same sentence. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution says Republican form of government. A republic. The difference in a republic and a democracy is real simple. A republic, 99% of the people can believe like me. And when we go vote on something, that's what you're going to get. But we, in that 99 percentile, are not hurting you or harming you in that 1 percentile. We still have your best interest. You may not think it's your best interest, but we're not hurting you. We're not harming you. We're only trying to bring you over and to protect you, secure you, All right, I don't want anybody hurting you just because you think differently. You may think differently on God or spirituality or, who you like or who you claim you love. Okay, I'm not going to hurt you and harm you for that. That's what a republic is. In a democracy, let's use the numbers 51 and 49 versus 99 and 1. In a democracy, 51% can believe like y'all have been believing and cutting the women off and cutting the men off and doing this and doing that and doing this and doing this. And, oh, you rich people, you're rich because you had an idea of a service and a product and it blew up and we're going to tax you more and you this and that. You have no foundation. It's just this one day and this and that and then this and then this. You have no foundation whatsoever. It's never consistent. It's never solid. There's no integrity. There's no foundation. There's no moral ground. There's no ethic ground. There's no any kind of ground whatsoever. It's just always wishy-washy. But if 51% ruled, then guess what the other 49% had to do? What the 51% wanted. Now, does that not sound like the deep state? Does that not sound like their democracy? Gaslighting, manipulation, conniving, subversion. I mean, if you would listen, words matter, because if they don't, some of you shouldn't be arguing out there with your spouses, for one, and then two, you wouldn't be arguing with me like some people try. If words matter, they matter, right? Terminology matters, language matters, verbiage matters, everything. We even have a style guide in government. There's a style guide, how it has to be written. Law goes by that, how it's written. A colon here, a semicolon. A comma here, no comma. Words matter. Punctuation matter. Grammars matter. Everything matters. See, and so many people are living in a world of subversion, chaos, manipulation, gaslighting, algorithm whores and social media and slaying this and slaying that. You're just all over here. But when it comes to government, when it comes to military, it's all a foundation. It's broad. It's foundation. That's why people's emotions are wishy-washy. That's why their feelings are wishy-washy. Because they're all basing it on things that no foundation. Nothing. And these laws that our founders put into place especially, but then also there's some along the way that are great. There's nothing wrong with them. And it protects you. It secures you. That's why people like me are calm, collect, suave, etc. That's why others look like a chicken with its head cut off. So, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton was the first Secretary of the United States Treasury. All right, but Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison wrote the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers were in between the writing, the drafting by James Madison of the Constitution and the enacting of it, putting it into work. So March the 4th, 1789, which was our first inauguration date in U.S. history. All right? Boom. That changed in 1933. But it happened all those years. So you have James Madison, Alexander Hamilton. Guess what they said? Well, the liberals should love this one. I love this. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and Federalist Papers number 10 and number 14, which said democracies are dangerous. James Madison and Alexander Hamilton wrote in our foundation that they believed that presidents should have unlimited terms. Meaning if the people wanted to vote them in, we could vote them in. Man. Our founding father, remember, liberals, the Constitution, President Trump's a threat to the Constitution, a threat to the Constitution. The father of the Constitution, the man who drafted it, words, terminology, structure, everything. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution doesn't say anything about term limits. So the Congress in 1951 violated the Constitution by putting term limits on the president. They called it a ratification and an amendment of the Constitution, the 22nd Amendment. Now, why did they put term limits on the president, though, and not term limits on themselves? Then that's when you take my timeline that you've heard me talk about. I have a timeline from 1941 to 2016. And when you look at all the actions of what took place during that time period, you'll see where the deep state, the swamp, their quote-unquote democracy that they established for themselves and not for you, we the people, you'll see it clear as a bell. 1941, War Powers Act. After 1951, that Congress and after Lyndon Johnson and all that establishment of their quote-unquote democracy, when the CIA took over and the FBI and the judicial branch and they started doing all these things that were not in the order of which our foundation established, the legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch, all in that order. Legislation branch, legislative and executive, we vote them in. The judicial branch, the president that we voted in, when a judge is up to be replaced, that president that we voted in nominates that judge, and the Senate of the legislative branch confirms that. That ain't been going on in the last 70 years. That timeline is so important. In 1973, the deep state, they hung themselves. They damned themselves. See, they never dreamt that we, a secret military, and the generals, the admirals, etc., massive team of people, they never dreamt we would take this back over. See, they actually hung themselves in 1973. They tried to put limitations on the president by what he could do with the military, so they did what? They amended the War Powers Act of 41 and 42 and the War Powers Act of 73 and called it the War Powers Resolution, where a president must declare a national emergency. Well, guess who did what through the years? From 1979 to 2016, every president did what? They would invoke a national emergency and they left it open. They never resolved it. They never terminated it. They left all these executive orders with national emergencies open. That's why you've heard President Trump say, I've ended 8 wars in 8 months. Guess where they were? Executive orders, national emergencies. Congress abused their own powers. Congress, that Constitution, they abused their own powers. They used subversion, manipulation, and gaslighting, tricked the people, got the people thinking and saying the word Constitution, don't know anything about it. Definitely don't, you never hear a liberal talk about the Declaration of Independence whatsoever, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, when it becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, to overthrow such government, to reset it. See, so the Constitution is not as important as the Declaration. The Declaration came before that. The Constitution's only good when that framework is keeping those representatives who represent us in check. Well, when the people ain't doing that, and the people don't even know the 3 branches of government, when the people don't even know the simple core values, the simple basic structure that my new book's going to be about, when you don't even know the simple basic functions and operations of your government, which should still be small, but still, when you don't even know that, and you don't know that about the military, what the hell are you? You're just existing. You're an occupier. You're an oxygen occupier. That's all you are. You're not an American. You're not a citizen. You're not a civilian. You're just an oxygen occupier. You're just existing. You're not even living. You're just existing, and you're hoping on a prayer. You're wishing on a prayer. You're not living. You're not walking. You're not being commanded. You're not a commander. You're not whatever it is. You don't have a foundation. No wonder Americans look the way they look. Because you have no foundation, but you have no knowledge of the foundation. You have no knowledge of the origin, no knowledge of the history. Then you only know how to make it applicable because you have no knowledge of it. The Declaration comes before, but when a long train of abuses. So that's for people who can identify, Congress, you put term limits on the president, violation of Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution. 1973, you try to put limitations on the president with the military, a commander-in-chief. You see he has to declare national emergency. Well, then guess what all these presidents did through the years? Declare national emergencies. So you had the military in one ear and you had the Congress in another, and it was... And you know why it was? Because you, the people, also were focusing on all this crap that don't matter. How big your house is, how much land you got, what your car looks like, your makeup, your eyebrows, your hairdo, and all this other stuff. Focusing on the wrong stuff. Things that don't matter, things that are temporary. The Bible tells you to not be of the world. And a lot of you, boy, y'all are nothing but the world. You look like the world, you act like the world, you talk like the world, and you are the world. Now, you can have nice things, there's no doubt. But guess what? I walk the walk. I know what I'm fighting for. I have a foundation. I have an origin and a history. And my lineage dates back to that and pre that. Native American, and I date back to the Revolutionary War. Every one of my family have fought in every single war. All the way back. Documented, baby. Got it. So, what was Congress doing putting term limits on the president but not themselves? One. Two, they put limitations on the president with the military in 1973. And that's what's biting them in the ass right now. President Trump has taken the War Powers Act of 1973, which is Chapter 33 of Title 50, which is where 1550 is located, and using that against them, which is perfect. You use all of this crap that they try to perverse and subvert to the public and use it against them. That's why you ain't heard many of them saying you can't do that. Oh, well, yeah, you can. But you ain't heard many saying that because they can't quote the laws. They don't know the laws. All right, and they don't want to quote some of them because they know that they went and passed this. They're people that kept their little charades going all these years. Exposed, baby. So see, you go back to quote-unquote Joe for the target audience. You think the target audience. I'm like, okay, so in 2017 to 2021, January 20, 2021, for what the target audience thought was President Trump's first term, every single Title 10 and Title 32 order that's in operation right now is from back there. So if Joe Biden was real and really president, he would have had the same authority and power as every other president. But an executive document under Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 relinquishes all authority to the Secretary of Defense of the President of 1550, President Donald John Trump. Title 32. That's a federal National Guard call-up. Title 32 in 2018, ladies and gentlemen. Mad Dog Mattis, United States Marine Corps. All right? They put out a Title 32 order after President Trump's Executive Order 13848. All right? With the national emergency for election interference. All these people out there, oh, President Trump's not doing anything about the election. Yes, he is. Where are you? Where have you been? You're not included in that, and there's some of you are in committees. I've met some of these people across the country. You're not included in it because you have no idea what's going on lawfully. That's why you're not included, even if you're on a committee somewhere. Everything has been pre-planned because so many people don't even know the basic functions and operations of laws and orders. Good ones. Good laws and orders. Why would quote-unquote Joe continue an executive order with a national emergency for election interference that President Trump signed September the 12th, 2018, Then under Title 32 orders, a National Guard call up federal, because elections are federal. All right, it's not just a state, not one state. It's federal. National Guard call up. Why is the National Guard.mil putting out on pages in 2018, 2020, 2022, and this November 2024, just a year ago? Ain't even been a year yet. That the National Guard are at polls all across this nation. They're all under the same Title 32 order. Same Title 32. So for the target audience, they thought Joe Biden was president in 2022 and 2024. Why are the National Guard under the same Title 32 order from 2018 in 2022 and 2024? If President Trump's a dictator and a threat to the Constitution and a fascist and a communist, all that, if he's all that, why is quote-unquote Joe continuing an executive order and a Title 32 order from 2018? You think President Trump signed an executive order and put the military out that's going to turn around and capture him? Don't you think he would have found out about that in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025? Don't you think he would terminate that now? I mean, if that were the case, let's just play devil's advocate for a moment. If he found out, oh, they tricked me, well, you'd terminate it right now and say, all right, well, good luck to you in 2029. Right? Come on, people. None of that even, you can't even make that make sense. The Texas border and the Logan Act prove everything. President Trump went to Texas in 2024, February 2024. All right. Look at John Bolton, who was just indicted on 18 counts. All right. Already pre-planned. This was not live time. Anybody who thinks that, again, you're the target audience. You're why I'm here. All right. But John Bolton, in February 2024, John Bolton was on CNN. And the guy said, can President Trump serve a second term with all these trials and lawsuits against him? You got to listen. He asked, could he serve a second term? John Bolton said, well, the Constitution specifically bars the president from serving a third term, but knowing Trump like I do, he'll seek to ratify the Constitution to stay in power. The question wasn't about a third term. The question was about a second term. John Bolton replied with a third term. That is Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1. That is 1951, the violation of the Constitution by the Congress back then. That is also your puppet government, civil affairs validation. That is a validation of 45-47. That is about the validation of Dear Johnson's Rattle Traps books, Part 1, Part 2 here. All validations, baby. Every aspect of it. Daily, weekly, monthly at this point. Texas border. President Trump, that same month, was at the Texas border. For the target audience that thought, quote-unquote, Joe was president and real, that would have been a violation of Executive Order 13848 with the national emergency, election interference, because it was an election year. All right? That would also have been a breach of national security, because if Joe was a sitting president and you had the former president at the border of a crisis, which the border, again, is not also a state thing, that's a federal thing, that would have been a violation of Title 18, which would be your federal criminal procedures. The Democrats, Republicans, everybody, the rhinos, the never-Trumpers, all of them, every aspect, they could have prosecuted President Trump on that alone. That one thing alone. Or add to it. Because it was visual to everybody. Everybody witnessed it. President Trump sitting there. He had the Adjutant General of Texas and the governor with him. You never saw Joe Biden with the governor of Texas and the Adjutant General of Texas. The Adjutant General is the one that gives it all away. He's the one that gives the command structure away. That's a rank structure everybody witnessed. That was a chain of command everybody witnessed. There's your Chief Executive Officer of the United States of America. There's your State Chief Executive Officer. And there's your Commanding General of the state of Texas, of all armed forces of the state of Texas, and every armed force that was in Texas. He's the Commanding General. That's a rank structure. And President Trump told the whole world it's a military operation twice, and he said it's a war. Invasion of public safety. Well, there's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution, the writ of habeas corpus. Oh, wow. Well, what do you know about that? That's a legislative branch. Invasion. All right? President Trump said we've been invaded over and over and over again. He said our gravest threats are not abroad, they're within. So there's your Article 1 legislative branch, and there's your Article 2 together. Well, Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, Democrat-controlled House, Republican-controlled Senate, bipartisan. Now, the government's in a continuity of government, so all this shutdown stuff is for the target audience because they have no clue what's going on. All right? They're looking for their tonsils. They got their head wrapped around their rear end and up their rear end and up here looking. It's like, take your head out your, just take it back out your butt and then loop your head back around. All right. The whole thing's in operation. Every aspect of it. There's a continuity of government invoked. It's partially revoked right now. Partially means it's partially invoked. All right. President Trump uses law war manual terms all the time. They're not government terms. Never will you hear those terms mixed in government. They're all straight out of the law war manual. The ones he's using are straight out of the military occupation chapter. Eisenhower's been mentioned over and over and over again. All right. There was an article just last week that Headset did. Last time it happened was Eisenhower. That's a com for you. That's a validation for you because Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, and five-star general established the continuity government. And he also simultaneously established the Presidential Emergency Action Documents, which are draft classified. Department of Justice, ironically. You heard Benny Jonhson at the quote-unquote funeral for Charlie Kirk that didn't have a casket and no burial place. You heard Benny Jonhson say that a godly government took over this nation. We have here the Department of War and Department of Justice represented. Well, one, you don't put all of your order of succession in one building. So that's the first thing that shows you what you're watching is a movie. It's all theater. The president was there, the vice president, the secretary of war, all kinds of secretaries, all kinds of cabinet, Department of War, Department of Justice, all in one building. And he said the Department of War and the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice are actually the ones who are part of the Presidential Emergency Action Documents, not the Department of War, not the Congress, the Department of Justice. So you have all that, all these visuals, all those visuals. So the Logan Act, another one. So when we get back on the Adjutant General, let's go back to the Adjutant General real quick. Let me just drive that home because people love it when I do this. The Adjutant General reports to the state chief executive, the governor, unless Title 10, National Guard, have been invoked. I mean, it can't get any more clear than that. The only person that you saw with the governor of Texas and the Adjutant General of Texas during the whole Texas thing, which is still going, is President Donald John Trump. If Joe Biden was the sitting president, that would have been a violation. And like I said, President Trump, he told you down there, it's a war. All right. Well, guess where that Title 10 order came from? Proclamation 9844 from February 2019. So if Joe was president, How did Proclamation 9844 from February 2019 make it from 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024 to January the 20th, 2025 to hand right back to this dictator, fascist, communist, this king? That is how ignorant liberals are. That's how ignorant Democrats are. And if there's still any rhino, never Trumpers out there, that's how ignorant they are. And they'll be stupid if they continue that. Ignorance you can educate. Stupidity you can't. Stupidity is looking at something like a pink rose and calling a pink rose green. That is stupidity. Because you're either, you know you're wrong and you don't want to be wrong, but you still stick to that. So then you had 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies that quote-unquote Joe continued to hand right back to President Donald John Trump, and they all have Title 10. Most of them have Title 10 invoked in it. The others are things like your Doge. That's hilarious. Why would Joe Biden fund Doge if President Trump's a dictator, a threat, all these other things, a Nazi and a king? Why did Joe Biden put Doge in the American Rescue Family Plan Act of 2021? See, this is why people need to read. Yeah, over here in the American Rescue Family Plan Act of 2021, you'll see monetary going to Doge. 8 executive orders. Hong Kong. President Trump said it was China, then he told you it's Hong Kong, more specifically, with the Panama Canal. All these people, all these liberals, Democrats going crazy over President Trump saying, we're going to take back the Panama Canal. Executive Order 13936, July 14, 2020. Executive Order with a national emergency. Why didn't Joe terminate all these? If he was president, he would have had the same power and authority. An executive order, executive branch, executive order. Pen, paper, president. Revocation. He, quote unquote, could partially revoke a continuity of government. The last full 24-hour day of a presidency, quote unquote, Joe partially revoked a continuity of government executive order, but he couldn't revoke any Title 10, Title 32 military orders. Is that why? Because he was the first quote unquote president to not have an order of succession with the Department of War and the National Security Council? Is that why? Yeah, probably so. Because he wasn't president. He wasn't real. It's all an operation. All right, President Trump just truth about senators a couple of days ago or yesterday. About senators were being spied on. Jack Smith, Merrick Garland, named all these people. Merrick Garland appointed, Jack Smith, all fraudulent, yada, yada, yada. It's all in Supreme Court dockets by President Trump way back. All right. But all this is an operation, all that's strategic, all that's a tactic. So, remember these emergency satellite phones that 50 senators were given in 2023? See, most people can't even tell you how many senators there are. 100 senators. Whoa, so 50 of them received these emergency satellite phones. 2023. And now, President Trump's telling you that senators, certain senators were spied on. Their phones were tapped. Oh, what was it, those emergency satellite phones that were being tapped? Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Sting operation, baby. Sting! Even though it had already been done. That's just for the target audience. Marine One. Oh, funny. So here's all these people, right? This is how you can get people. If you still have friends and family who are like Republican, conservative, patriot, but they're like, yeah, those people, you say, okay, you wear hats all the time. You say, make America great again and all these things. They don't even know that's on there. They don't even know what that means. All right, you have all these slogans President Trump said, all these rhino Republicans, all conservatives, patriots, they claim they're all this and that. Trump is right about everything. Follow the money. The best is yet to come and all that. They say all these things, right? But they're like, ugh. So you think that President Trump will let, quote-unquote, Joe Biden one-up him? Do you really think that? Because that's what this would be if it... So the new Marine One, it showed in 2024 that quote-unquote Joe took the inaugural flight in the brand new Marine Ones. Well, if you go look up the brand new Marine Ones, they got a nose on them. The old Marine Ones are more rounded. They're very distinctive. Very distinctive. You think that President Trump would really let quote-unquote Joe one-up him and ride around in the new Marine Ones? And you think that President Trump, being back in office right now, October 26, 2025, you think he'd be flying around on the old Marine Ones? Because that's what they're showing you. That's what they're showing you. Him leaving for Malaysia, so he left the lawn of the White House, going over to Joint Base Andrews on Marine One. In the old Marine One that had to have an emergency landing in the United Kingdom, you really think that President Trump will be rolling around on the old Marine Ones when there's new ones? That alone right there, that alone solves it all. What you're watching is a unique, special, strategic operation. It's the most biblical, monumental, historical operation known to man, to this planet. You think the liberals are freaking out now about a king? Wait till they unveil the plans of that. However, they're going to carve it out of Mount Rushmore. I don't even think he should be on Mount Rushmore. I think there's a mountain right there beside Mount Rushmore. If you've ever been to Mount Rushmore, he should be his own, mountain. All right? It should be just like this massive, just President Trump alone. No offense to the other presidents, but President Trump should be his own mountain. All right? Yeah, they should still put his face on Rushmore just because, but then right across the way in the valley, the whole mountain should be President Trump. That's what I would do. I would have a four. I'd say, yeah, go ahead and put his face there, but that mountain right there, that's going to be it. And by the way, every year it's going to be mandatory that liberals are going to be forced to have to camp there. That's what I would do. They'd all be handed little packets like this. Like, here's your Constitution. This is going to start out with this. You're going to learn this thing that you yell out of your mouth all the time that you know nothing about. All right, just this little bitty thing right here. You're going to learn this. And you're not leaving here. We're going to feed you, but it's going to be no salt, no pepper. You can't taste it until you learn it. And then you can quote it, and then we'll let you out. And then you go to the other Mount Rushmore, and there you'll pick up some other founding documents. And then you'll be able to go live your life. But you want to stay here and benefit from the fruits and the labor of this nation, you're going to learn the fruits and the labor of this nation. You're going to learn the founding documents. You're going to learn how they were written, why they were written, and how they're made applicable. That's what I would do. So you probably won't ever vote for me for president if you ever see me as president, because that's what I would make people do. You would know your foundation. You would know the history. There would be no excuses. I can't remember it like you. No, you would. You'd find a way to remember it like I do. You'd find a way to have it right here and right here. You'd find a way. I can assure you that. So all this stuff, it's not stuff, but it's stuff, right? It's good stuff. The good stuff, right? So I do have the new book. I don't know when I'll put it out. I'm still doing all the other stuff, getting it all tidied up and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's 560 plus pages of all your foundation, but in a easy to read, study as you go, learn it as you go, learn it as quick as you can, but still, take it all in, study, study, study. Page numbers, workbook, highlight it, do what you did. Well, no, do what you didn't do when you're in school, all right, because you probably know this if you paid attention in school. especially history and government. All right, we all have those classes. All right, so yeah, use it as a workbook, highlight, do all those things, write notes. If you have a chunk over here and you're like, oh, I remember this like this, do that. I mean, it's real simple. That's how you do that. All right, that's how you study. That's how you learn. You learn it in your way. All right, so you can't be all President Trump was right about it, everything, and then doubt him. So when you doubt that this is this or this is that, or if you think it's real time and you're reacting to all these things to shut down, etc., you're not knowing what you can know. Every aspect of everyday TV, news articles, etc., it's all part of the operation. So when I share CNN, The Hill, The Guardian, I'm showing you the operational part of it. And I show you, here's the article, but here's the tie-in to the law that it applies to. Right? Every single bit of these ties back into a President Trump law. And guess where most of them came from? The orders came. 2017 and 2021. That's when most of them came. So that's why it's continuous. That's why that's a dash. It's continuous. 45 through 47, 45 to 47, 45, 46, and 47. What did President Trump say the other day with the generals? He said, I'm 45, 46, and 47. I don't really want the results of this one, but I'll take it. Right? 46. Yeah, because he's the special commander, the supreme commander. That's why the liberals call him a king. All right, you know what 45 plus 46 plus 47 equals? 138. Those of you who don't believe in gematria, I think you're about to. 45 plus 46 plus 47 equals 138. 138. You know what my name means in gematria? 138. Do you know what Donald Trump's name means in gematria? 138. You can't have faith in the image of a man. So this is the quote I'm going to leave you with. Your faith, if your faith is in the image of just a man, that's where you're going wrong. Your faith has to be in God, all right, supreme being. Then you can believe in the man with the plan. That is the plan. The whole thing's a plan. It's all strategic. It's all special operations. Part 1, Part 2. All right. I couldn't put everything in them because no one would read them. But those get you in the ballpark of where you're supposed to know. That's why they're #1 bestsellers. All right. Then also, this one right here is the #1 bestseller. Country music is just as corrupt. It's all linked together. All these things. You just saw the NBA got busted. NBA's getting busted. They're the tip of the iceberg. NFL's been doing it. College football's been doing it. A bunch of them. If you think that Alabama, #4, came back in the last few seconds, all right, and I'm an alumni. Oh, man, don't spill it here. I'm saying this while they're winning, too. All right, if you think they came back like that, if you think Texas came back, beat Mississippi State by 17 points down, if you think that the Denver Broncos scored 33 points in the fourth quarter last week, you think that they just all of a sudden, oh, we got a plan. Why didn't they have that plan in the first, second, and third quarter? It's all linked. All this stuff's linked together. Country music's even worse because a lot of these people have sang songs that affect your life, talk about your life. They pull on your string, your emotional strings, your happiness. That's the whole point. They got you. They got you captured and controlled. And once you learn what I know and know what I know, and whether you were military or not, doesn't matter. You can know it. Again, once you learn that and you escape that matrix, you're never going to see the world the same again. And you're going to be proud of it, and you're going to be glad of it, because then you're going to find your what? Your contentment. Boy, growing up, I was going to be the next George Strait, the next George Strait, the next George Strait. I was, man. My mom, dad, friends, everybody can tell you. Talent show and this and that. Moved to Nashville. I worked with a lot of big, famous, some of the good ones. But I got in there. Even then, though, when I worked in it, they didn't tell me the secrets. All right. I go in the military. I escaped all that. Go in the military, do all these things. Then had a hit producer hit me up and all this other stuff. Get on Billboard. The first Billboard hit, it didn't even take 5 minutes. But it was a 5-minute discussion with a Billboard guy. Everything I thought about country music was just destroyed. Just like that. This is how it works, man. Got to pay to play the game. So, we had 2 Billboards. 2. George Strait's had 60 number 1 hits alone. That's just 60 number 1s. That's not all the top 5s, top 10s, top 20s, and the ones that charted but didn't make a hit. I've only had 2. But those 2, uno dos, that's all it took, baby. Only 2 to prove it's all rigged. And boy, I'm going to tell you what, you talking about some ass kissing? That is what Kid Rock's whole argument with Bruce Springsteen was all about. When you go back, he's got it on his website to this day, Kid Rock does. And he says, yeah, well, I could have taken that song from this, number 2 to number 1, but I didn't want to kiss the ass of some program director. Radio. That's the system he's talking about. Now, he didn't expose the whole system like I did in this book. This one right here tells you the whole system. I'm the first artist and songwriter in country music history to expose it. Right here. First. And let me tell you what's awesome about that. When Kid Rock went country, when he didn't do rock, when he went country music, that All Summer Long song that he's talking about that he could have taken from number 2 to number 1, the one that sounds like Sweet Home Alabama. We were trying different things. We were smoking different things. That song. You know whose team took that up the Billboard chart? Mine. See how this all ties in? That was my team. Same team that gave him all his country hits. Same team. But guess what? You wouldn't know those teams. They're not Googleable. They're not searchable. You got to know them. Because they're on the backside of things. Luckily, my team, they can't stand the deep state. They can't stand all the dirty ones in country music. That's why they did things like with me. Put me up on the chart. We beat the Billboard really, really, really bad monetarily. We beat it really bad. It normally costs, ask Zach Top, all of you out there loving on Zach Top, ask him, $750,000 for his one first hit. $750,000 for one song. We didn't spend remotely close to that. Nowhere in the ballpark. That's what allowed me to write this. And all of you who drop off the page or drop off the podcast when I start talking about it, you're just as guilty. You want to separate these things. I've done podcasts on music, won't even have a tenth of what we have on a podcast for government and President Trump. You're just as guilty. You don't want to believe it, but it's, again, you question one lie, you got to question them all, but that's the point. If you keep supporting the same trash and the same people, it's the same, they're all linked together. ABC owns ESPN. You don't think that college football ain't rigged? You don't think money hasn't ruined everything? Look at who's all linked with country music. They're all linked together. Now, they're not priority. Child trafficking's priority. Sex trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking, all that's been priority. But they're starting to get to them. You should want to support someone like me. I write all my music. I produce all of it. I write a lot of my songs solo. Now, I have co-written with people who are great patriots, like Jeffrey Steele is a great patriot. I've written with him. All right, I've written with a lot of good people who are good patriots. They all root for me to put that book out. The good ones. Casey Beathard, the good guys, the good. Ain't many gals, all right. Ain't many gal songwriters out there, but there's some. But the good ones, the good patriots. I've written a song, but other than that, if it takes 5, 6, 7 songwriters to write one song, they're showing you that's their farm system. And you talking about DEI, and you talking about kissing rear end, you talking about a bunch of politics and a bunch of dirty people, especially when this is involved, and especially fame and fortune. Some dirty ones out there. Naturally, they're going to talk trash. Naturally, they're going to retaliate, the ones who have. I hadn't had any retaliations, but naturally, if there ever was any, because they don't want to be exposed. President Trump said it, the light shines on the darkness, and when darkness is exposed, naturally they're going to retaliate. Naturally they're going to say things, because what they were doing was not ethical. It's not moral, and there's no integrity backing it. You should want to support good, wholesome, quality music. How people can't hear country music today, oh my God, it's like the same stuff. Girl, yeah, girl, girl, yeah, girl, oh yeah, yeah, girl. Yeah, girl, 20 cigarettes, girl, yeah, girl, girl, yeah. Same shit. How do y'all keep listening to that? Why don't you want to hear a fiddle and a steel guitar and a twang and man, you can hear George Strait. You can hear Randy Travis. You can hear way back here. How in it? Anyway, that's a whole other podcast. It's all linked together, though. It's all linked together. Your faith cannot be in the image of a man. Your faith must be in a supreme being, a God, the God of the universe, the God who commanded man. And when he commands the right men and women out there fighting, when he commands the right people, you will be able to see it. That's why the Bible talks about the fruits of a labor, the fruits of labor, the fruits. The Bible says you can judge a tree by the fruit it bears. You can do it. You can judge. You most certainly can. The part about judging others is when you you have no foundation, you're wishy-washy, and you're trying to point at someone else when you don't have a solid foundation. But you can tell when someone's a good person. You can tell when they have a good interest, good motives, good intent, because it'll show. It'll be there. Look at all the people who met me across the country. You can tell by the expression in someone's eyes. You can tell when someone's trying to brush you off or when they're trying to talk. Most of these moving lips out there, they brush you off. They don't care about you. They ain't here on their time, on their dime. They don't care about you. Their algorithm, post, algorithms. A good foundation and a good platform will maybe give you 5 or 10 things a day, wholesome things to bite into that run this nation and the military. That's why I don't care about algorithms. That's why you have to click on my profiles to get to what I give you daily, because what I give you is going to lead you straight to wholesome, good, and what the operation is doing, military and the good government that we're getting it back to be tiny and little. But the real power is going to be in men and women, we the people. That's what we got to get back to. But it's a daily process, daily right here, daily with the right things, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. Remove materialism, find your joy and contentment in life. It's not going to come on all these influencers and these podcasters out there. All they're doing is stirring up drama and propaganda. That's all they're doing. And what's bad about it is once everybody reads, especially these books right here, once you read and you know there is a strategic plan in place, you're going to realize every single person who could have told you the whole time, and all they did was stir you up with your emotions, your feelings, and all these other things, and you didn't have to. The whole time, if you love this man, you support that man, even though he's the face, the name, the brand, the image, the likeness, whatever, doesn't matter. He signed up for it. He was willing to do it. He took it on. He knows what's going on. The military, the generals, the admirals, all the teams, secret military, etc., etc., etc. Everybody that's working on this, President Donald John Trump, you could have known the whole time. Could have known.